Welcome again. I see so many new faces in the room, which is wonderful. We appreciate the time of your busy schedule to come and be a part of our professional advisory series. For those who are new in the room or online, we host these events 4 times a year. And we're also available to come out to your county if you don't live here in Black Hawk. I know we've got quite a few Bremer friends and Grundy friends that are here with us today. We would also be open to the opportunity of coming directly to your county and providing a professional advisory course for colleagues and individuals in your county that are doing that work. So Julie and I had a good conversation about that at our table at lunch. So my name is Kay England, and I have the honor of serving as the president and CEO of the Community Foundation. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to hear from the Charitable Dream Team here at the foundation. Primarily, that would be Terry and Derek and myself. They let me do some of this fun work as well. So we're really just going to have the opportunity today to talk with you a little bit about how we can all be intentional as professionals in this financial and charitable realm to introduce opportunities for people to be generous to their communities. Not only now during their lifetime, of course, we're really fortunate that so many donors decide to make charitable gifts through the Community Foundation during their lifetime. And we recognize that professional advisors like yourself, and many in the room here today, refer your clients to charitable options with our Community Foundation, and we love that. But we want to be really intentional about remembering to talk with people about opportunities to give charitably through the Community Foundation to benefit our rural communities and here in Black Hawk as well when they're no longer with us in our community. So we have some really cool data and information to share with you and a little bit of some case studies, because we know that PAs love to hear about, specific ideas about how other people have benefited and or worked with our Community Foundation. We always want to work in partnership to help you look good and with your clients and provide resources that'll increase the impacts that they can make and lead to the community. So feel free to, guys in the room, I know this is kind of an awkward setup, so feel free to move chairs around however you'd like to. Poor Erin is right up here in the front row, doing great work. And I should mention that Erin and Kristen, we do have a couple contractors that are working in our counties, both in Bremer and in Grundy County, and they're both with us today. So they partner along with our staff to be intentional about, again, promoting charitable opportunities in their counties. So I think I will jump in. I'm not following my notes at all, so I don't even know why I create those notes, but I do. So I think what we'll do is jump into the first slide here, and I'm going to step aside so I'm kind of out of the way of people in the room. But as we talk about opportunities for connection here today, I think one of the things we just really wanted to set the stage for is that things have kind of changed a little bit on where people are born and raised and where they choose to stay post-education, even post-retirement, right? So for generations, people used to stay in their same home county or their community, right? Many of us graduated from high school, went off to college or careers, and left our home communities and have never been back, right? And that trend is certainly repeating itself. It is more common. But when we did stay in our local communities, it was a little bit easier to keep those dollars that were basically grown locally, right? Thinking about growing up in a farm community, I grew up in Audubon County, and a lot of the generations before me stayed in Audubon County, right? So when grandma and grandpa would die and you would live in that county, that wealth would potentially be transferred directly to you within that county and or the nonprofits in that county. Well, a lot has changed since then, right? So people have left their communities. Cue the next slide. Here we go. So now passing wealth from generation to generation has really changed a lot. And these are all things that you know, right? But we're just kind of setting the table for the conversation that's coming with some really great data and information that we want to make sure that we can pass on to you. So traditionally, there's 3 charities or there's 3 beneficiaries, right? So heirs, the pumpkin farm, could be crops there too. taxes or our community, which of course I think we really want to talk a lot about the community in our conversation today. Okay. Next. So this is what the transfer of wealth can really look like, right? So you have a growing and aging population that's also growing wealth. You know, then you have more dollars to pass on either to your community and or to the next generation. So one of our main points today is that people are not living and staying in the communities that they were raised in. So when people do pass away, a lot of that wealth is leaving our Iowa communities. So I'm going to tee it up to, I think Derek's going to jump in next. He is definitely the data geek on our team. And so Terry and I are always really willing and able to pass it off to him.
Oh, man, what a tee up.
There you go.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm Derek Kimball. I am the Director of Charitable Impact here at the foundation. So I'm in Blackhawk County, I'm in Bremer and Grundy County and a couple other of our counties as well. Terry has a whole swath of them kind of further out from here. So charitable work related to the foundation in this area, Kay and I, but primarily me, would be your contact. If you have questions about any of this, definitely the math of it. Oh, I would love to talk to you about the data here. This will just be a brief kind of sampling. Other couple quick housekeeping things. Please, we always have way too much food left at the end of these events. So please get up and get some more to eat. Bathrooms are out the doors and that way around the corner there. If you need to do that, that's totally fine. And the last thing I would say is I have 5 kids. And so interruption is like no problem at all. So if you have questions, please just shout out. I'll turn my hearing aids up for you, so I'll hear you, and would love to have those questions if you have about the data. So, and all of this will come to you after today's session, these slides, so you don't have to scramble to write it all down, and it's being recorded as well. So anything related to this, we'll be able to send. Okay, so over the last few years, as Minnesota State Extension, which is actually the group that has studied the data around Iowa's sort of assets, and then also the amount of that's going to transfer over the next few years. And of course, when assets transfer, we start looking at the things that Kay just talked about. Is there going to be a tax conversation? Certainly with folks in this room, that's going to be a piece of where some of that is going to go. Is it going to go to children or family of some kind? Yes. But I think that piece here, this community piece, is something that while we know, and most folks know, like, yeah, I could leave some dollars to charity. The idea of leaving it in different ways, I think, is not something many people know about. And specifically what I mean is you could have clients or folks who decide to leave dollars for not just the food bank or their church or specific charity, but to their hometown. We have funds that are for a town here. We have funds that are for a county here. We have funds that are for a specific cause. Like we have a fund here that is only for one-on-one mentorship here at the foundation. And when I have conversations with folks who are interested in their giving, and trying to figure out what they might do someday, a lot of the time they're saying, I just had no idea that, I could even do that. I didn't know where the vehicle was to give to an area or a cause. I just thought I had to give it directly to the church or the food bank or the Salvation Army or whatever else. There are a lot of options through the Community Foundation, and it's pretty simple to set up a fund that does something specific in a region or around a cause. So that's just something I would highlight there. Okay, so assets in Iowa's current cumulative household net worth, $857 billion, which really means nothing to me because I don't have anything near that in my bank account, right? But over $30 billion is going to transition over the next 10 years and $128 billion over the next 40 years. And so this data is really, this is the top level zoomed out, highest kind of level of the data for what is going to transition statewide. Okay. And this is the 2023 contributions for charitable giving, and every year the pie breaks down in something similar to this. But what I would say is always in the subtext here when you're looking at where do charitable donations come from? Oh, 2/3 come from individuals. It's actually higher than that because a number of individuals give through their business, or they have a private foundation themselves. And so their giving is kind of through that vehicle as an extension of them. So really, usually the paragraphs underneath of this will say 80, maybe even 85% of charitable giving is through an individual person's working with their advisor to figure out where are these dollars going to go. So I think it just shows the opportunity we have to work with people in our community and make them aware that that the impact that you can have in your community is huge. And then that bottom line there, 33% of Americans have an estate plan. That seems, and as our folks who have worked in the financial services sector, Terry and Kay have, I have not, they start talking to me about what their work had been previous here to this, the foundation. And there's some interesting things that can happen if we don't have these things detailed out, right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity there to work with individuals in their giving. Here we can see the kind of breakdown. This is a few years old of the wealth by asset type. And just a couple reminders here. We work with advisors all the time around their clients making qualified charitable distributions. We talk about required minimum distributions with your clients and our fund holders or folks that are making gifts through our foundation. And the other thing I would highlight there is the Endow Iowa tax credit. There are still funds remaining this year. So if you have clients who are interested to get that 25% state tax credit, let us know. I just had an email a couple of weeks ago from a woman in one of our adjoining counties and said, send me a list of all the Endow Iowa eligible funds you have. So she looked at the list of 15 or whatever we had for that county, and she picked a couple, and that's where she made her giving here. So that's I think, a really nice piece. And that bucket still has $1.5 million or so in credit money left this year. So, okay, so 5 for the future. I want to park on this just for a minute. In your folder, you have a flyer that has this logo on it at the top. And it's real basic. It has that graphic from that first slide and a few details of what the 5 for the future, what does that mean? And the thing I love about this campaign is it's really community focused. People, I think, resonates with people, and it's really easy to understand. I think the general public can really get behind this. And what it is we're asking folks to consider giving at least 5% of their estate to charity. That's really the whole thing. And because we have such a large population, a percentage of our population who is growing older, getting into those years where they need to start figuring out, what am I going to do with my assets someday? It represents a big opportunity. And I think, and Terry will share a little bit more about this, I don't want to give it away, but there's some survey data that we came across recently that suggests that giving folks the idea, oh, I could leave a slice of my assets to charitable, to something charitable, is planting that seed is really what it's about. It's not about twisting anybody's arm and trying to get them to do something that maybe they don't want to do. People are generous around here. They want to give back to their communities. They just don't always know the best ways to do that. And maybe they've never been presented with that option to do so. Particularly around, again, giving back to their community. I had a couple that called me a couple of months ago. They live here in Cedar Falls. I just met with them earlier this week. And I said, hey, we've got this 5 for the Future campaign. And really, we're trying to help people understand that if they would designate at least 5% of their estate to the community that they grew up in, that they raised their kids in, that maybe their grandparents lived in, that they went to community events in, that was such a formative part of their family's history and legacy, if people give back to that, then we can really support in a big way that community moving forward. And so, and this couple that I talked to, I said at least 5%. They came back and said, I really like that idea. I like the idea that the foundation will be stewarding those assets forever, and that there will be people there that know what's going on in 50 or 100 years in the community that I might not know now to make the decision of where these assets should go. So this couple said, I see your 5, and I'm going to raise you to 40% of your estate plan with us. And so we're going to have a follow-up meeting and get that kind of written out. Super easy process to do, and just a few page document to really document their intent, so that when their funds come to us, 40% of what's going to come here is going to go back to Blackhawk County. They really wanted to support this area that they know and love and have raised their kids in. But so I think that kind of community feel that I want to support my community, but then also if lots of folks support their community, and this 5 for the future, this idea that I have a vehicle to give to my community. I think if it takes root and people are talking about it, we really have an opportunity for folks to say, you know, I've heard about this before. I know my neighbor or my grandpa or whoever is doing this. I'm interested to know I could support this one community or this county or this cause. And so I think, I think it brings us all together in a time where sometimes we're not very together on a lot of things, pretty divided in some ways, and gives us something to rally around and really make a difference long term. Okay, the data. Okay, so this is just a sampling. This is a little smaller. For those of you in the back of the room, you might not be able to read it than I thought it would be, but you'll get the slide. So Blackhawk, Bremer, Cerro Gordo, Floyd, Grundy, Kossuth, and Winneshiek. This is just a sample of some of the counties that we serve. It's about a third of them. So Blackhawk, you can see the household net worth is about $35 billion at this moment in time. And the average transfer per person that passes away in each of those counties is going to be around the 100,000 mark. And I was talking to some folks from Grundy this morning. I don't know if it's that farmland down there that's just like so rich or what, but the data was pretty interesting. Per death, that down that way, there's a higher average, just what the data would say. But around 100,000, I think people can see themselves in that. That's a little bit more realistic number than 857 billion, right? That gives you a sense. And the other thing that was really interesting here about this data is our population is growing older and will continue to grow older for another 20 years. And so the percentage of folks who are doing this estate planning that are looking at what do I want my legacy to be is rising for another 20 years. We're in it, and it's going up, and then it'll take a little while to come back down. We've got like a pretty good opportunity here to really talk about this 5 for the future and cement it for a while. This will be a campaign that the foundation is talking about for a number of years to come because of the opportunity that exists. No questions yet at all. She thinks I'm doing good. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate that.
She gave you a thumbs up.
Yeah, a little positive support there. Okay, so the 10-year transfer, we kind of narrow that down a little bit. And I'm going to talk about Blackhawk County just because I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's the same story for all of the counties. Okay, so Blackhawk County, we saw the 35 billion that's going to transfer, or I'm sorry, that's the assets. 1.3 billion of that is going to transfer in some way, shape, or form. So it's going to go to taxes, beneficiaries, or to charity. Okay, and if 5%, so again, 5 for the future, if 5% of that is captured in endowments at the community foundation, and again, endowments are permanently invested funds where we don't touch the principal, but we grant out a portion of the earnings. Okay, so that would go on into perpetuity. If we do that, then what we will see in Blackhawk County just for 10 years, and this is not the assets number, this is the grant making we can do from the assets. is about $2.7 million increase in annual grant making in Black Hawk County. And right now we're doing just over 3 million. So the 10-year, it nearly doubles in our ability to be able to make those grants to the community, to those nonprofits that are serving our community in so many unique ways. So really a huge opportunity there. And again, the story is similar in our other areas where, around double-ish is what we're looking at for that data. So again, this is the transfer amount. It's 1.3 billion. 5% of that is a number, whatever it is. And the small percentage that we grant out every year of that is still in the millions. So pretty compelling.
Do you have any data on what percentage of people leave charitable gifts in their estate in the area at all?
Did we get that out of that survey?
I can't remember. It's a really good question.
Not sure.
I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
Don't have that right now. That's a really good question.
Good question.
We should find that and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
What percentage are charitable?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it's the majority, but I don't know.
No.
I don't know. I don't think it's the majority. So again, the education, the opportunity is huge.
There's some more data for you to find.
Will you write that down?
I did. I got it.
All right. All right. I have to push my 1:30 meeting. Okay. So this is the 40-year transfer. So this is the whole deal. This is zoomed out, kind of that whole arc of folks that are going to be doing this planning. It's a fairly linear increase in a way. Sorry, ex-math teacher here. So linear. 10 years, it was about a 1-point-something billion. 40 years, it's up to 5 billion. So what we see, because of the growth that those endowments have, those numbers will grow quite a bit over 40 years. So before I said, hey, this would double our ability to be able to grant money out into the community in similar organizations. In this situation, our current assets after earnings will allow for about $7 million worth of grant making in 40 years. So this is just what we hold right now. If we were to bring in, if no donations were to come through the foundation at all, the current assets would grow to this in grant making, up from 3 million or so right now. But if this 5% is captured in endowments over the next 40 years, we will see an additional 10 million in grant making in Black Hawk County only in 40 years. So we're doing 3 million in grant making right now in Black Hawk County. This scenario would add up to 17 million. Question.
Answer.
Uh-oh. Go.
Google on my phone, but apparently less than 6%. Leave something. But I think it's important to say these next couple things. This is going to support you. Ready? Study suggests that if asked about charitable giving during estate planning, a much higher percentage of people would consider leaving a gift, and experts believe that actively discussing plan giving options with potential donors could significantly increase the number of people who include charitable requests.
And as if we planned it.
That's what
As if we planned it.
That's in the
Let me
script.
see if I have anything else to say. I always have more to say, but I'm not going to. Terry is going to talk about that.
All right. I don't know how I follow up those great numbers because I am not the numbers person. That is definitely there. But we do, that was some really good data that is supporting all of the 5 for the future. But I guess, the question is why? Why would someone even want to give back to their community? And well, thank you, Angie, for that. I've got a little more data to share with it. And Derek mentioned something about this. There's a survey out there. There's actually a lot of surveys, but this one focused on asking the individual if they had a charitable bequest in their will, and if they said no, why? So there's 3 top answers. It doesn't really matter which order they're in. When I'm talking to nonprofit boards, I will say that the first one is no nonprofit board or no nonprofit organization asked them. Because I really focus on those nonprofits who are not talking with their donors about those estate gifts. That's number 1. Number 2 is for this group. Their financial advisor didn't suggest it. Not all financial advisors bring it up. Not all have that charitable thought. A lot do, some don't. So right there, the financial advisors didn't suggest it. And the one that just makes you go like this, you could have had a V8, is I didn't think of it. And that is really the one that is so easy to overcome, which is why this campaign started. And just a little side on that. Iowa did not come up with this. We're kind of stealing from Kansas, Nebraska. They've been fairly successful over the last few years. The Iowa Council of Foundations said, hey, we need to get this started here. And it's because that third reason, people just don't think about it. And as Angie said in what she read off of Google, it's very likely if you talk to people about making a charitable bequest in their will, make their IRA beneficiary, whatever it might be, a charitable bequest, they would probably do it. So it really is an awareness. Marketing can play a big role as to where people leave money, even in their states. And I'm going to be very careful not to offend any large national marketing charitable organizations. When people who love those, that is great. And if you want to give 95% of your estate to them, that's your option. Leave 5 to your community. That's all I'm asking. Let's go with 5. And it really is because they have huge marketing. And so when if you talk with your clients and they're saying, okay, who should I give this money to? Well, who do you support? Well, I write a check to this organization and they're the big national ones because they're on TV and they're great. And so, you might just follow up with, okay, well, we'll put those down. Rather than expanding that conversation into, well, where do you give locally? Or that's really great that you support them, but do you do anything locally? Just kind of opening up that train of thought. So it is, that the 5%, it's really easy. I've been talking about it now for a few months. This came out in July. And while I get a lot of that same reaction of, I never thought about it. And then they also think 5%, well, that's not that much. Even if you have a huge estate, 5%, might be a big dollar amount, but in that pie that Derek had up before, it's just this little piece of the pie. And some people don't have big estates. And even if they're smaller, it still fits in that scenario or this platform of if everyone does it, the results are going to be amazing. So it's large estate, small estate, we are all good. So there is a payoff. We do find out, I've got 15 counties I work in. Most people, believe it or not, they're not familiar with the community foundation. We'd like to change that. But it's just kind of that in itself is an awareness. The affiliates have been around for 20 years now and making amazing grants. And we are still having a little bit of a identity issue out there, but we have lots of people who are helping us overcome that. But we've found that people are very appreciative of kind of knowing what they didn't know. They didn't know about the community foundation. They didn't know we had all these options. So when they're aware of it and they do make the choice to give back to their communities, they can feel really good about the difference that they're going to make. And knowing that they're going to be building that stronger community, both now, if they're able to give during their lifetime, or into the future. Now, again, their children may no longer live there, but there will be a community there, and there will be other families living there, even if their families aren't there. And then the payoff for you in your practice is the fact that, again, you may be presenting something or at least raising that question to something they never thought of, which kind of makes you stand out from other people that they may have worked with or have heard their friends talking about, or if they start talking about that, maybe you recommended this 5 for the future and I never heard about that. So again, like Kay said, makes you look good too. And we also want to see that you have a better relationship with your clients. We want to have a good relationship with you so that we're all working together. I think Derek did mention, I came from financial services. I did that for 34 years before I was here. I know when you go have a client meeting, you have a list of all these things that you need to cover. Charitable planning I would love it if it's at the top. I'm very aware it's not, okay? But just knowing, and I also knew, I thought that, because I used to do with the firm that I worked with, we did quite a bit of charitable planning with, I was in Kansas City, the Kansas City Community Foundation. And so I thought, well, I know pretty much, okay, I'm a financial professional, I know these things. And then I started working here, and I found out what I thought I knew, I didn't really know. And we don't expect all of our professional advisors to know everything we know. That's why we're here. So, everybody has their specialty, and charitable giving and planning is ours. So that's, again, we really want to try to enhance those relationships that we have both with the clients and with our professional advisors, because we're all working for that same good of getting our clients, or your clients, our donors, whatever we want to call them, to reach their goals. So, and Derek kind of touched on this, we have so many different types of funds. When I sit down with people, I don't start telling them about all the choices we have, because it's like, going to the restaurant and there's like 25 pages of menu. We don't want to overwhelm anybody. So it really is, we have funds that can support organizations. We also have funds that can support, areas of interest or geographic areas, all kinds of things. And we can mix and match and figure out the best way that we can meet those needs for the clients. So now and later, so we have plan gifts, and usually plan gifts, think about that they're only estate gifts, but plan gifts actually can be during your lifetime or at death. The ones during the lifetime are usually can be categorized under, if you're going to have a business sale, a medical practice sale, a farm sale, something that is going to significantly change your tax status for that year. And when it's coming. You've decided, okay, I'm going to sell this business, the farm, whatever it is, in this period of time. It becomes a planned gift, which is just something in the future. The other option for that is we have people in this transfer of wealth. You may have people who are now the baby boomers who did inherit some wealth from their parents. And it's money that they really hadn't counted on, maybe don't really need, and are thinking, okay, what can I do with those dollars? I have a couple that I'm working with, and it might sound bad, but they're kind of just waiting for an elderly person in their family. When that person passes, they're going to be selling farm, and then they'll be distributing the assets to probably a lot into charity. But the comment was, we don't know when that's going to come, but they're planning on doing something with those dollars when they get them, not just keeping them for themselves. And then, of course, at death, you've got be the retirement asset beneficiary, go into trusts. We have a memo of understanding that we use when we work with our donors. Pretty much what that means is when there's a bequest in a will, or there's a beneficiary designation that names the community foundation, our memo of understanding tells us exactly what that donor wanted. So we've sat down with them, we've gone through what their goals are. We have the tools to put that together, create the new funds, get that machine started, and then those dollars are distributed how that donor had wanted them. So that's really the way that we can make sure that we're following the donor intent, and that's into perpetuity.
It's easy to change that also.
Yes, it is. You can change that.
Compared to changing a will.
Yep.
Or a trust document.
Yeah, it is. And we do it for free. No offense to the attorneys, but yeah, it is. And that's why we really suggest that they just name the community foundation as in the bequest, because we can change that MOU at any time as long as they're still, still alive and well. And again, we can do that without any cost to them. So now we are going to move along with our charitable. Get my notes here. I want to get this right. So we have a couple case studies that we're going to talk about. Put a little reality to all of this. Okay, so our first case study, this is Jim Erb, and Jim was an attorney. I have to make sure I get all my facts straight on him here. He was an attorney in Charles City, and he was the mayor for 22 years. And he actually continued his work in the city after he left office, because he was just such an advocate for Charles City and Floyd County. When I met Jim 8 years ago, he was talking to me about the transfer of wealth. And Kay knows every time we saw Jim, transfer of wealth, transfer of wealth. I mean, he was such an advocate. He was, before it was trending, he was talking about it and saying how important it was that we all start thinking about it, talking about it. He was also instrumental in establishing the Charitable Partners Committee under the Floyd County Community Foundation. So we have our local impact committee in Floyd County. He said we need to have more activity by professional advisors. He helped create this group, and they met for a while monthly, and then we went to quarterly, but most of the time it was monthly. And it was to talk about the latest trends in charitable planning and to be ambassadors for the Floyd County Community Foundation. And guess what? The transfer of wealth, because that was really, he flew that banner well. And as was his way, he used his expertise to create an estate gift plan. He had careful and thoughtful planning resulted in a significant gift to the Floyd County Community Foundation. And it is an endowment fund, and it is in the what we call our discretionary fund, which means that is in our grant process. So those dollars are going to be significantly raising the amount of grantable dollars in Floyd County. I believe it'll start next year after the waiting period for the gift. So, and just an aside, this is a portion of his estate. He has children, he has a family, they were all taken care of, and he still made a very, very significant gift to the Floyd County Community Foundation. And our next case study, this is a little bit different, a little bit about generational giving. We have the Weiner family, and they are actually at Norris Springs, so kind of on that edge between Floyd and Cerro Gordo County. The Weiner siblings, there's 5 of them. They created a family fund in 2010, and the families decided that they wanted to make sure that, so the 5 siblings, they all had kids, and now there was they think we started at like 12 or 13 grandkids, got up to 19 grandkids. The point is that one of the siblings, Dick Weiner, he would send a letter out to all the grandkids that were old enough to read, or the parents helped them, but say, okay, grandchild, we are going to give you $1,000. What local charity do you want to support? So they were starting to teach these kids that there are dollars that grandma and grandpa, the next generation up, had set aside for family charitable giving. And for very many years, the kids would do that, and they would send the letters back to us, and they were really cute. They would just, and the fire departments got a lot because they're all worried about the fire and things that they heard in school. But it was really a great way to do that. And then as I don't know how many grandkids, there's probably great grandkids now. It really was getting a little unmanageable for that group of 5 siblings. So what they ended up doing, actually, because the fund that they started up was a non-endowed, it was a quasi fund, so they could give out more than the 4%. But what they decided to do is stop going to grandkids, because they had got their education, and then they split it up into 2 funds, going to portion to Cerro Gordo County, part of it to Floyd County, to a couple of specific organizations that had helped their families and that they had supported for years. So they really kind of went through a whole process with us of the different types of funds that we have and how they work, from being very specific and the quasi fund to a permanent endowment fund, again, leaving that legacy for the family in Floyd and Cerro Gordo County. So our next case study will be presented by our very own.
Oh, gosh, thanks. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about business owners, and we have a couple examples. We didn't give specific names here, but many of you have been a part of these kind of conversations in the past, I am sure, where you're working with local professionals that are getting ready for retirement. We've worked with some that are retiring and liquidating a business, whether it's a practice, a medical practice, a dental practice. We've had multiple different types of careers that have come through this way, where they have established funds with the community foundation in partnership with their professional advisor to set aside dollars to offset, large tax burdens that can happen when you're liquidating, a highly an asset that has really expanded and grown, and to really set aside some of those tax savings and using them as charitable impacts instead. So like in some situations we've had where somebody who's closed a medical practice has set aside dollars to be used for the next several years in charitable giving into what we call a quasi fund. And then set some dollars aside in a true endowment fund. So those dollars will be there into perpetuity. So those have been really good opportunities for people to partner with the community foundation as part of their estate and or their planning purposes to, again, not have so much of the burden go to the taxes, right? And more of the benefit to go to charitable organizations. So and in many of those cases, again, I would just say that we are just honored to be around that planning table. Many times, as you can imagine, especially if it's a complex asset like a business practice or a firm that's closing or changing management, et cetera, that there's a lot of conversations that have to happen. So we are really honored to be around the table where we're meeting with the potential donor and the professional advisor. Sometimes it's a CPA and an attorney potentially. Again, so just putting that out there that we're welcome, or that we would welcome that opportunity to be around those tables with some of your clients, if that would be helpful. And again, I think in both of those examples and the examples that Terry went through with some of the case studies with Jim, Herb, and the Weiner family, it can be during your lifetime, of course, that charitable giving and or at death. But again, I think just the strong message is to be talking to your clients about charitable giving, the impacts of charitable giving, and at least getting the 5%. So I'm going to turn it back to Terry, who's going to talk a little bit more about private foundations. We've had more conversations in that arena.
Yeah, and this is kind of a very brief, but and we really have not, as an organization, we have not really focused on private foundations too much in the past. But in the last, last year or so, we have had some private foundation board members come to us. They're generally family members that have gotten together years and years ago. And that was kind of the thing to do, start a family office or start a private foundation. And they are looking at, they're aging. They're looking at what's going to happen now. Who's my successor? And one of the things that, we look at is what can we do? Well, the easy solution is we can take that private foundation and put it into a donor advised fund during their lifetime. And then it would just have a succession plan like what we do for our regular donor advised funds. The other, that would be, if they wanted to do that now, we can also look at working with them more or less. Do they want to try to bring in successors of their own, whether it be family members, so that that new group of board members, if you will, would be making the decisions and carrying on that intent and that legacy that the original ones wanted to see happen. The feedback that we're getting from some of the retiring group, is that they're really not sure that they're going to be able to find those nieces and nephews that are really going to be in sync with what they why they created the private foundation, where they wanted to go in the future. And that's kind of where we can step in and say, well, yeah, the community foundation can do that. There's some differences, and this chart really just kind of goes through some of the differences between a DAF and a private foundation. Probably some of the bigger things is that required 5% distribution out of a private foundation, where a donor advised fund does not have that. But back to what we can do and give that, those retiring private foundation board founders, we can give them a little bit of peace of mind that the community foundation will execute their wishes for those dollars if they come to us. We will manage them and we will distribute them based on that donor intent, whatever, if it's to support a certain geographical area, kind of like the funds that we have in different, it could be for a specific cause, lots of different things. And what we point out to them, it's kind of our list of structure. We have bylaws, we have a gift acceptance policy, conflict of interest policy, grant making due diligence, investment, spending, all these things that we have that retiring board can say, wow, you have a really good structure. I'm going to look at my nieces, nephews, whoever they might be. We have bylaws in our private foundation, but we know that that board can change those bylaws. And they can, you know, they might not, they might. There's that question there. So the community foundation, third party objective, has our own structure. Give them a little bit more peace of mind. So we're just kind of, again, planting that seed. If you do work with any private foundations and they're looking at, well, what's going to happen when I'm gone? And what if I'm not comfortable thinking that this group that might be coming up behind that is not going to continue to fulfill my original intent or our original intent for this private foundation? So I don't know if anybody has any questions about that.
The other issue that sometimes we run across with private foundations, especially that are heavily funded or exclusively funded by farmland, that has become a big issue because in order to make the required minimum 5%, we have private foundations that are liquidating farmland every year or every other year to make that 5% payout. So you're burning up the asset that private foundation funder really created the fund for, in one case anyway, I know for sure. So it's also something to think about that sometimes it's just not a sustainable model for a private foundation because of the way that the assets within the foundation are structured. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so almost done here. If you have questions, would gladly entertain those. But I think to kind of wrap it up, the big thing here is the 5 for the future. I think is really something our communities can rally around. That our folks can really say, I want to support my community, and any charitable gift supports the sector. It doesn't have to come through us necessarily. It doesn't have to be permanently endowed necessarily. But I think planting those seeds, like the survey that Terry shared, that people just didn't have it in front of them. So they didn't know it was an option. So they didn't think of it. And that to me seems like, wow, what an opportunity there is to really take this and kind of run with it a little bit and at least put it in front of them. 5 for the Future is the name of that campaign. Every community foundation in the state of Iowa is going to be using that language. Again, we've got some bordering states that have done something similar. I think, we really have an opportunity for that to be something that becomes a bigger part of the conversation across the board. And the one more sheet I wanted to draw your attention to in your folder, I think it's on the left-hand side, about 3 sheets in, talks about, in some detail, but also pretty high level, the ways people can give to the foundation. So you can see there's lots of assets there that can be transitioned to the foundation in lots of ways. And on the back side of that are the fund types. Okay, so donor advised fund is what Terry was talking about with the private foundation conversation. That's a really popular one for us right now, but the rest of them there are also options as well. That community impact fund down there about halfway is the fund that would go to a county or a city or a region, geographical area, if somebody is interested in something like that. So I'll be sending these materials out to you, as well as the recording and the slides here in the next few days. So you'll have all of this digitally if you want to use it with clients or whatever else. And then we do have one more little video to show about the transfer of wealth that I think also is a good piece that you can use. Any questions though, before we get to that? Yes, Mike.
Just a little more specifics, but not take us into too much detail, but back to your example with the, I'll see your 5 and raise you to 40.
Yeah.
Which, there are just all those details and complexities. Am I thinking of it sufficiently that if that couple's 65, they do the math around their net worth, but I want to save, do it tax efficiently and so on. So I might create a beneficiary designation to the community foundation for 70% of this IRA. But I'm 65, hoping to live to 95. I might need long-term care, so on and so forth. So it's really just sort of a best estimate. We'll do our best to make adjustments as we go. That's about the level that goes in planning. I know it could get into wills and specifically those assets, but is that generally how that would unfold?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so if it is a 40% of their estate is going to come to the community foundation, we would establish this memorandum of understanding that would say, whatever asset we get, right? It might highly appreciate, it might really drop depending on when they die, right? But whatever asset we received, they will clearly state in the memorandum of understanding how they want us to utilize that charitable gift into perpetuity. So it might be that it's going into the endowment fund that we hold for the Northeast Iowa Food Bank, or it might be going into the Bremer County Impact Fund, where the local committee is going to make grant decisions around the available to spend that comes into their fund every year. So they would tell us how they want us to use the dollars, and then whatever we get, we would.
And I might have misspoke a little, Mike. It is not 40% of their estate that is coming to us. They are in their will going to designate a portion that's going to come to us, and of the portion that comes to us, 40% is going to go to the Blackhawk County. Does that make sense? So it's regardless of
Sure, and I imagine it's just all over the map and very circumstantial, but that helps as well, because I was imagining there are other scenarios where if they know the whole estate's going to be liquidated and so on, they might just say 40% of everything. If they know it's all channeled through their will, that gets very specific case by case. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the most complex memorandum of understanding that we have is actually, I think it still might be in Buchanan County, where we have a donor that we have a list of 15.
21.
Is it 21? Okay, I stand corrected. 21 of her favorite charities, and what percentage each one of those charities will get. And I mean, this potential estate is around $1.5 million or $2 million, I think. Depends on what day she decides to pass away. But so we will take that list and take the cash that's in there and do the math and allocate those dollars as per her request, which she could change, which she
Is
met with her
changing.
not that long ago. It is changing.
It's changing.
Right? But that's one of the beauties of the MOU.
Yeah.
Good question.
I think a great conversation starter though is retirement dollars, before tax retirement dollars. But a lot of people, in my opinion, when they think about estate planning, they don't necessarily think about, well, what will the net amount be for my kids or grandkids from this? And so I just think leading in that and maybe walking through a very easy example of, hey, if charity gets this, they get every dollar. They're not tax this 501c. But if your grandkids get it, this is, depending on what tax bracket they're in, they're going to get far less.
Yeah.
Than that. I think that's a really good way to lead into then maybe an expanded conversation on charities.
Just a quick comment. It's a great point, especially if all the adult children are doing fine.
Right. And that's
Then the parents they're going to be just as fine with 90% as 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not leave your assets that are going to get the step up in basis to the kids where there won't be a taxing, and take the IRA out to the charity. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We had about a month ago an event here for folks that have a memorandum of understanding with us. They intend to make a gift to us someday, or people that have started a new fund with us. And what went around the room was people were sharing, like, my kids are doing better than I ever did. Like, why would I do? And like, that was a common thing where around the room, a number of people said just that. And so, have maybe rethought about what's going to happen someday. Big opportunities.
But if you talk to some kids that really were going to be beneficiaries and now they're not because Five for the Future and all that, then just direct all those calls to Derek. Unpopular calls. But yeah.
That's good. Okay.
What other questions?
Angie?
I'll just add something. I had the opportunity a number of years ago to do some research with financial advisors around how they guide clients on charitable giving. I won't ask you to raise your hands around whether you make this part of your practice. I won't put you on the spot, but I was really struck by the number of financial advisors I spoke to, and there were certainly some that built it in, but some that felt like it was not their business, or they felt like it felt too personal or something to imply or to ask their clients about that unless their client brought it up first. And so I've had a number of years to think about that since. And again, it was some, not all, who mentioned that. But I just, as someone who's, in this work, and someone also who thinks about my own future and what will happen with my estate, like, I think it really is so critical, because our money is personal. It's our value. It represents our values. It represents our life's work, and the way we've spent our lives in our communities represents our values and what we care about. And so I think it's just such a critical conversation to be having with people so that they can make the right decisions, or decisions that they feel really comfortable with and that honor their life and the communities that supported them.
Anything else?
I got one more
Yeah.
thing I've almost forgotten.
Mhm.
Can't believe I forgot to put this in here. Well, I guess kind of the elephant in the room is the estate tax is changing next year. So the sunset of the estate tax, which, if we go back a few years, charities used to be a bigger part of estate planning, because more people had an estate tax bill. Then we had this lovely, where it was 20, 22, 24, whatever it's up to now. When that changes, I think that that the charitable giving thing is going to come back to the table, hopefully in a bigger way, depending on where that number falls, which, does anybody know what it is? Anybody know?
Don't think
Crystal
it's gonna
ball?
be around 14 million
Okay, I didn't.
for a couple.
Yeah,
If it's portable.
okay, so that's still
It's,
a lot, but there's, when it got, into the 20.
correct me if I'm wrong on that. It just seems like, because it's indexed to inflation, it was 5 million or something like
Right,
that.
yeah.
Is that right?
So it's okay.
Or something.
Yes, that's be around 14
But
million for a couple.
Is it final now, or is it still kind of?
No,
Yeah.
I don't
think so.
They
I
won't
mean-
finalize it till the sunset provision.
Okay. Well, that's just something too that, that may make it, as Angie's talking about, might bring that charitable giving conversation a little bit closer than it is right now, because people are like, oh, my estate's not anywhere near 23, 4 million, so.
I don't know, but if you think about what Angie's saying with your community, if you really want to make a difference or feel like you can make an impact on your community, it is by giving and thinking about what your values are. So much of our lives today that are controlled by things that happen in Washington, we don't have any control over, but we can in our local communities, and charitable giving is the way we can live our values and pass the legacy of our values on. So it is the way, it is that little conversation piece you might be able to have with someone without actually talking about politics.
Don't talk about that.
Yeah, plant the seed. That's what we're talking about here. I think that's a great note to end on. We're just right up against 1:00 here. So please reach out to us if you have questions about this, or have folks that, would want to have a deeper conversation about what their plans are. So